A basketball foul-out turned into one of the biggest viral moments of the WNBA season, and months later, even the player at the center of it says she can't tell you exactly what she said. Today I'm walking you through the entire Brittney Griner viral clip controversy, from the actual foul that started it, to the lip readers who thought they knew exactly what she said, to a Chicago Bulls legend's former teammate stepping in to defend Caitlin Clark, all the way to Griner's own on-the-record explanation months later. And I want to be upfront with you before we even start, because a lot of channels covering this have gotten one detail wrong. It wasn't Michael Jordan himself who commented on this, it was Jordan's former Bulls teammate, and that distinction actually matters for how you should read this whole story. Stick around, because I'm going to show you exactly what was said, by who, and why. Griner's own explanation months later might be the most honest thing anyone involved in this entire saga has offered. Let's start with the moment that actually kicked this whole thing off. During a game between the Phoenix Mercury and the Indiana Fever back in May of last year, Brittney Griner fouled out. If you've played or watched enough basketball, you know fouling out is one of those moments that can genuinely rattle even a veteran player. You're removed from the game against your will, usually at a moment when emotions are already running hot, and you have to walk off the court in front of a packed arena while cameras are pointed directly at your face the entire way. That's exactly what happened here. As Griner walked to the bench, visibly upset, cameras caught her venting, clearly saying something, though nobody watching at home could make out the audio clearly enough to know exactly what. That's where things went from a normal, human moment of frustration to a full-blown viral controversy. Within hours, clips of Griner's reaction were circulating everywhere, and amateur lip readers online started offering their own interpretations of what she'd said. Two competing theories dominated the conversation. Some viewers were convinced she'd said something along the lines of an expletive followed by the word trash. Others were equally convinced the actual phrase involved a reference to Caitlin Clark's race. Both interpretations spread fast, and because Clark was the presumed target given the context of the game, this escalated quickly from a clip of an upset player into a full-scale conversation about race, rivalry, and how veteran players in the league were treating the league's most talked-about rookie. Media commentators jumped into the debate almost immediately, and their takes varied depending on who was doing the talking. Journalist Jemele Hill weighed in on how she interpreted the clip, lending her own read to the swirling debate about what exactly Griner had said and who it was aimed at. Conservative commentator Riley Gaines also posted about the clip, framing it as a clear example of Griner making a racially charged remark toward Clark, and specifically invoking Griner's past legal history in Russia as part of her criticism, arguing the reaction to a hypothetical reversed situation, meaning if Clark had said something similar about a black player, would have looked completely different in the public response. That's the kind of framing that turns a blurry, hard-to-make-out sideline clip into a much bigger cultural flashpoint almost overnight. Because now it's not just about basketball anymore. It's tangled up in broader arguments about race, media double standards, and who gets the benefit of the doubt in moments of ambiguity. Now here's where the Michael Jordan confusion actually comes from, and it's worth clearing up properly because I've seen multiple channels get this wrong. It was not Michael Jordan who spoke out on this. It was Ron Harper, a Chicago Bulls guard who won championships alongside Jordan during his career, who posted his own response defending Clark on social media. Harper's message was direct. He argued that players test Clark hard, not because of her race, but because she's genuinely one of the best players in the league, and he pushed back specifically against the idea that the physical and verbal intensity directed at Clark had anything to do with her being white. That's a meaningfully different message than simply piling onto Griner with outrage. Harper was making an argument about why elite competitors get tested by other elite competitors in general, using his own decades of experience in professional basketball as the basis for that take. Somewhere in the retelling across various clickbait channels, Harper's connection to Jordan as a former teammate got flattened into headlines implying Jordan himself had spoken, which simply isn't accurate, and it's exactly the kind of detail that's worth getting right if you actually care about telling this story honestly. So that's the entire storm that built up around one ambiguous, hard-to-hear clip, competing lip-reading theories, media commentators weighing in with sharply different interpretations, and a Bulls legend's former teammate adding his own perspective on the broader dynamic of how Clark gets treated on the court. And then, weeks later, Griner finally addressed it directly herself. During a media session, when asked point-blank about the viral clip, Griner gave an answer that was honestly more grounded than almost anything else that had been said about this whole situation up to that point. She confirmed she remembered being angry in that moment, which makes sense. Fouling out is frustrating for any competitor. But she said she genuinely didn't remember the exact words she'd used in the heat of that frustration. That's the detail sitting right in your title, and it's the actual, sourced, on-the-record answer, straight from the one person who actually knows what she said, or in this case, doesn't fully remember. I think that answer deserves more attention than it got, because it's actually a pretty believable human response, and it cuts against basically every version of this story that assumed certainty about what was said. Think about how many heated moments you've had in your own life, in an argument, in a stressful situation, where you said something in the heat of the moment and genuinely couldn't repeat it word for word 5 minutes later, let alone weeks later in a room full of reporters. That's not evasiveness. That's just how human memory works under stress. Meanwhile, you had confident lip readers online insisting they knew the exact phrase, media figures building entire arguments on top of that assumed phrase, and ultimately, the one person who was actually there and actually said the words couldn't fully reconstruct them herself. That gap between how confidently this story was reported and how uncertain the actual source material turned out to be is really the whole story here. Let's talk about why this matters beyond just this one clip, because this exact pattern repeats constantly in sports media now. A blurry, hard-to-hear moment gets captured on camera. Confident interpretations spread fast, because confident interpretations get more engagement than cautious ones. Commentators and public figures build entire arguments on top of assumptions that were never actually confirmed. And by the time the actual person involved gets a chance to clarify months later, the original, unverified version has already been viewed millions more times than the correction ever will be. That's not a Griner-specific problem, or even a WNBA-specific problem. It's baked into how viral sports content spreads across every platform right now, and this story is honestly one of the cleaner examples of that entire cycle playing out from start to finish. Here's my actual take on this. I think the biggest failure in how this story got covered wasn't from Griner, and it wasn't really from Harper either, since his actual point about elite competitors testing elite competitors was a reasonable, defensible argument on its own terms. I think the real failure was in how confidently unverified lip-reading theories got treated as settled fact by commentators on every side of this debate. My first reason is that nobody involved in the loudest takes, not the people claiming she said one specific phrase, not the people claiming a different specific phrase, actually had reliable audio confirming either version. And treating a guess as a confirmed quote is exactly the kind of thing that turns an ambiguous moment into a much bigger controversy than the facts actually support. My second reason is that Griner's own answer, admitting she didn't fully remember, should have been treated as basically case closed on the specific wording question, and instead, a lot of coverage barely mentioned it because it's a much less exciting update than the original viral claims were. My third reason is that Harper's actual argument about why great players get tested hard regardless of race is a genuinely interesting point about competition at the highest level, and it got flattened into a much simpler us versus them framing once it got mixed up with the wrong athlete's name attached to it. Now, the fair counterpoint here is that even without word-for-word audio confirmation, Griner's visible body language and the general tone of the moment were clearly heated, and some would argue that context alone was enough to justify concern and scrutiny, regardless of the exact phrase. I think that's a reasonable point. Visible anger during a fouled-out exit is worth noting on its own. I just don't think it justifies the specific, confident quote attribution that spread as fact before anyone actually knew for certain what was said. So, here's my question for you. Do you think Griner's explanation that she simply doesn't remember her exact words in the heat of the moment settles this story? Or do you think the visible anger in that clip was enough on its own to justify the reaction it got regardless of the specific wording? Let me know in the comments. Let's get into predictions. First prediction, high confidence. This exact pattern, an ambiguous clip, competing interpretations, a delayed clarification that gets far less attention than the original claim, is going to repeat again with a different WNBA player before the season's over, because the incentive structure around viral sports clips hasn't changed at all. Second prediction, medium confidence. I think Ron Harper's actual comments, once people start reading them correctly, instead of misattributing them to Jordan, are going to get revisited more accurately in future coverage of Clark's rookie and sophomore seasons as a data point in the broader conversation about how she's been tested physically and verbally around the league. Third prediction, lower confidence, the riskier one. I think if a genuinely clear audio or video moment involving any major WNBA player ever does surface with fully confirmed wording, it's going to get a fraction of the attention this ambiguous, unconfirmed clip got, simply because the guessing game itself is what generated so much of the engagement in the first place. Here's what to watch for next. Keep an eye on how Griner and Clark's on-court interactions get covered going forward, since a story like this tends to color how every future matchup between two players gets framed, fairly or not. Also watch whether other outlets ever go back and correctly attribute Harper's comments instead of continuing to misname them as coming from Jordan himself, since that correction says a lot about how carefully any given channel is actually fact-checking its content. In my next video, I'm breaking down every major viral clip controversy from this WNBA season and fact-checking each one the same way, separating what's actually confirmed from what's pure speculation that got treated as fact. Here's the one thing to take away from all of this. The most honest answer in this entire saga came from the person everyone was quickest to assume the worst about, and it was simply that she doesn't fully remember what she said in an emotional moment, which is about as human and believable an answer as you're going to get. If you want breakdowns that actually track down the real quotes, the real sources, and the real corrections, instead of just repeating whatever version went viral first, subscribe, because that's the whole point of this channel. Last question for the comments. Does it change how you view this entire story now that you know it was Jordan's former teammate speaking out, not Jordan himself, and that Griner herself says the exact words are genuinely gone? Let me know below, and I'll